everyone, today we're going to talk about the wonderful wide world of guitar swells and how to play them. This is a technique that's really popular in contemporary worship music and in other contemporary ambient styles of music as well. It's also really good to have in your bag of tricks for songwriting or working with other songwriters that might want this sound. Let's talk first about how to get the swell to actually happen. Now, in a bit more of a primitive sense, we can use our guitar's volume knob to give us something like this. And that's kind of a lot of right hand work. The other thing that you need to understand, though, is when our volume knob interacts with our amplifiers, it's really more of a gain control. So as we back off on the volume, it's going to take some of our tone and more of our gritty tone out of the amplifier. If you have a volume pedal, though, you can set up your volume pedal usually around the end of your chain to keep all of your gain stuff intact, and you can swell using the volume pedal with your foot, which is a lot easier. Which also preserves that guitar tone because mine's set up on the end of my chain. It preserves all that guitar tone on the back end and the front end of the swell. So as I swell real quiet, it's roughly the same tone as I wind up the volume. So the swell itself is happening with the volume pedal, and you can make that however small of a swell or drawn out of a swell as you want. But the other thing I got going on here is this. Take a listen to the effects on my guitar. So you can hear a very long, deep, and luscious reverb happening, and I've got a delay that's bouncing back and forth, in this case in stereo, left and right and everything. Now what that gives me when I swell is this extra keyboard or pad-like sound that builds off of each other. So not only am I doing a simple swell with the volume, but the swell keeps going with the reverb and delay. So now the volume pedal is off, but you still have the reverb and delay swelling smoother out as well, which is part of that sound. One other thing that's really cool with the big, long reverb and delay tails is adding a little bit of pitch manipulation if you got a whammy bar. If I swell up on this and I move my bar around, and I'm just doing very small little dips, it creates a much larger effect of the swell. It sounds like it's sort of bouncing around the room or something like that. Now, a lot of times when I'm doing this technique, I'm not really playing big open and bar chords. So if I play this progression from the opening example using big open chords, that sounds okay when it's just me playing by myself, but it's a little bit too much information that I really need to convey that message of the swell. What I like to play is a very simple two-note chord of a tenth. It's really an interval of a tenth, which is either the major or the minor third in the chord, but played an octave up from that. So very keyboard-like and very widespread. You have this really low bass note and this really high melody note that is as much information as you need, and then you let the effects kind of take over from there. So let's take a look at these four chord shapes that I use all the time for this technique. Two start with the E string and then two on the A string, both for major and minor. So starting with the A string, here's our root note D on the 5th fret of the A string. And then the 10th can be found on the B string on the 7th fret. And that's a major 10th. If we close that gap or we flat the third to make it a smaller interval, we get a minor 10th, which works over a minor chord. So that's like a D minor. D major, 5 and 7. D minor, 5 and 6. So I could play all of the chords in D major as tenths. D, E minor, F sharp minor, G major, A major, B minor. Now, C sharp diminished is the same shape as the minor 10th because I'm not voicing the 5th. I don't need a flat 5 in there. So there's only two chord shapes or two interval shapes to think about for all of your keys. And then we would go back to our major shape for this high D up here. Let's take a look at the shapes on the E string. Things change a little bit because we're not using the B string, which screws up all of our stuff on the guitar anyway. I'm going to be playing a major shape this time on D from the 10th fret, and then the 11th fret is our major 10th. So then if our major 10th is on the 11th fret, a minor 10th would be on the same fret as our root, 10th fret. So there's our two shapes from the E string as the root note. And then I can play all of my chords in whatever key. I'm in D for right now. Same. Major, minor, minor, major, major, minor. Diminished chord, but it has a minor 10th interval in the chord, and I'm not voicing the 5th, so I don't need to worry about it. Same shape as my minor chords. And then back to our major. So in the intro, I played this D major 10th from the 5th fret. I moved up to the 7th fret and played a minor 10th on E, E minor. And then I played a B minor 10th from the E string, because that's pretty close by. That E and B is just one string skip away. And then on the second time through, I did something a little bit different. Same chords, D, E minor, but then I skipped up to a high B on the A string, and then I played G off of the A string as well. Everything was on the A string that second pass. And then at some point, I don't remember where, but I played same D, same E minor, B starting off of the B minor starting off of the E string, and then I went down to a low G this time to mix it up a bit, and then I ended with a big swell on a D, an open D5, an open D power chord, which sounds good for an end. You can also visualize these tints coming out of larger bar chord shapes that you might already know. If we use D as an example again, this is a D major bar chord starting from the A string. It's the A bar chord shape if you're familiar with the Cage system. And all we're doing out of this shape is playing a select couple of notes, the root note and that 10th, like we said. So you can almost visualize that chord existing around that 10th interval. Same thing with our other 10ths that we used. Our major shape, here's a G played as a bar chord in the E shape from Caged. And again, we're only playing the two notes out of that shape. Same thing with our minor chords. And our minor chords from the A string as well, like the E minor. Just two notes out of that minor bar chord shape. Now on the swells themselves, you can play these one of two ways. You can try to strum if you mute all of the other strings that you're not playing, in this case of the D 10th, the 10th that I have on the D chord. If you strum it, you have to mute out all of the other strings, so E, D, G, and the other E string. And of course, this creates more of an abrasive tone, right? You can hear the pick going through the strings. Even on the swells, and even though the swell, the volume swell is taking the attack off, you can still hear that a little bit in there, depending on how aggressive you are on the volume pedal. What I do a lot of times is I do this pinch technique between either my thumb or my thumb pick in my first finger, or you can even go hybrid using the pick and then the second finger. And that again is a much more like a piano would be, pressing down on the notes of the piano. Same idea here. I'm not utilizing the pick to scrape through the strings, I'm just allowing those strings to sound by themselves. If this was useful for adding something new to your bag of tricks, go ahead and let me know in the comments below, and I will see you all on the next one.